Alyssa Pajoli, life, leadership, executive, and connection coach. Last week we talked about sexual intimacy. So if you missed that segment, go back, watch that one first, and then come back. This week we're going to be talking about emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is personally one of my favorites just because I came from a pretty traumatic, abusive childhood. It is one of the spaces where in relationships I'm able to feel seen, heard, and be have an added element of safety. Also, being a coach, there's a lot of growth and connection that happens with the emotional intimacy. So I just want to preface it before we get into the list because it's one of those things in those spaces that I believe emotional intimacy requires a lot more self-awareness of yourself and your internal dialogue than maybe some of the other ones because the experiential, the social, the intellectual, those are a lot of external. And so it's really hard to create a safe space of like truly present, connected space if we're not willing and able to be aware with ourselves first. So I'll share my screen so we can get going through the list and then we'll go from there. So again, we have the emotional intimacy here. Uh, like I was saying, the first one is articulate your feelings. Feelings and emotions are really important to differentiate. Usually a feeling is like I'm willing to approach something. I'm willing to approach feeling vulnerable. I'm willing to approach feeling sad versus I'm feeling avoidant to, you know, feeling discouraged or let down. So articulating your feelings, letting your spouse or your partner know what you're feeling, being present with it, and articulating the approachability or the avoidance factor within it. Identify your stories and sharing. So a lot of the times in conflict, one of the most helpful situations that you can do is say the story I make up about you is when we preface something with story, it allows the person that's on the receiving end to not be defensive right away. But also with the emotional intimacy, maybe it's something kind of along the it could be a story that you make up of like if I'm constantly continuously giving you bids to feel connected or to be present or to give you attention and you're pulling back or you're avoiding it or you're doing things like rolling over and hugging a pillow before you go to bed versus like turning inward and snuggling. A way that you could share that is like, the story I make up about you is that you don't actually want to have this present, like this connective time with me, or that you don't care about feeling connected. It could also be a space where you're sharing your stories and sharing more of like the a time that felt really good to you that brought in a lot of different feelings and connectivity that you want to share because you appreciate it and you'd like to create more of it, which kind of goes in like talking about your hopes and dreams. People who can share their hopes and dreams and make small actionable steps of like that forward trajectory really do a world of good because it allows that security and that safety barrier to be stronger. How am I to connect with you emotionally if I don't know where you want to be in 5 to 10 years? Gratitude, attitude of gratitude, what we appreciate always grows. My therapist once said that when it comes to like uh couples that are um very critical of one another, you want to do like 20 positives for every negative. So that's just something to keep in mind. That if you are a person that comes from criticism, you stonewall, or you are a fighter, to share gratitude towards one another, even if it's something as simple as like, you know what, babe, I really appreciate you taking out the trash because the truth and the reality is that when I have to, it makes me feel dirty and devalued. Um, Listen to understand with no agenda. This is more usually more typically or typically more difficult for men because they listen in the masculine and they communicate in the masculine, which is fact, knowledge, info, data. It can feel very transactional. There is nothing wrong with just simply listening to understand and to connect to your partner without an agenda of fixing it, providing solutions, finding a resource, but just really being present and listening. A great thing to kind of check in and ask is like, what would you like me to connect to? Or how would you like me to show up in this conversation? Having hard conversations. You cannot create safety if you're unwilling to go into a difficult conversation. Avoidance is not useful, nor is coming in hostile with hostility. So having hard conversations, a great place to do it is on a walk, sitting side by side on a table, at a table. Maybe if you're a person that kind of speaks volatile and you get in like arguments, maybe slowing it down, sitting next to each other and writing out like what you're doing and passing the piece of paper back and forth. The reason that's effective is because it slows your nervous system down and you're only likely going to write what actually matters. And sitting side by side has a way of making someone feel like they're in partnership and moving forward together on the same team. Then directly facing each other, it can be very intense and can add to feeling like there's going to be like a war. So being willing to have hard conversations, asking questions like, what about this is so hard for you? You know, what is your end goal to having this conversation? Getting really clear on what is the connectivity and what do I need to do and how do I get to show up to allow it to be a productive space? Productive and an agenda are two completely different things. And or going to therapy or class together. Emotional intimacy is one of those things where whether it's coaching, whether it's therapy, whether it's going to a new exercise class or a cooking class, whenever you can get out of your normal routine and connect with your partner or spouse, that's going to elicit different nerves and different emotions that's going to arise and that you get to build on that together is really helpful, very connective. So with emotional intimacy, this is what we're looking at. I will say that with the ability to articulate and regulate, it's a different ball game. It requires that me with me before the me with you, because if I'm not me with me and I'm not connecting to myself and understanding myself, how in green earth am I supposed to expect you to even remotely come close to being able to even understand or validate that? So pull your weight, do your work. Again, looking at a scale from 1 to 5, 1 not being really important at all, and 5, yeah, really important. I want to feel seen. I want to feel connected. I want to feel safe. What level of priority is that? And then what are ways in which your person can be showing up that will create that sense of safety, that visibility, that validation? And then based on what level of number of prioritization it is for you, how satisfied are you with it? I mean, if you're a 5 and you're only experiencing it as like a 2, how do we fill the gap? All right. So look forward to seeing you next week. I'm really enjoying all the questions and comments that are coming up in direct messages from doing these videos. So if there's anything else that you'd like to see me add and or questions or conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for you, and I'll see you next week.